We're going to be looking at verses 1 to 6. So we're not covering a whole ton, but next week we're probably going to take the balance because it all kind of hangs together from verse 7 on. So I wanted just to give y'all a little bit of background. Today's portion of the chapter is called Jesus Greater Than Moses. So far what we've looked at who Jesus is in chapter 1. We've looked at how he's better than the angels in chapter 2. And now in chapter 3, the writer's going to lay out the case for why Jesus is greater than Moses. So I wanted to give y'all some background. A lot of this you guys are already going to know, but I just kind of compiled it together about Moses and why would the writer feel it necessary to address Moses at all in this letter. So I did a quick Google search and an AI search as well for the most influential or esteemed person in Jewish history. And what returned were several lists with names like Albert Einstein, Sigmund Freud, David Ben-Gurion, Elie Wiesel, Golda Meir, Abraham, and Jesus. Regardless of whichever list that I looked at or what its source was, and whatever variety of names may have been on it, the name that came in first on all of the lists was Moses.
That is so strange to know.
Yep.
I would never have guessed that.
He is probably the most esteemed in secular and religious circles.
Really?
Yeah, by the Jews. Okay.
So this is by the Jews. This isn't
Yes.
general population. This is the Jews.
Right. And the reason, Jan, just to kind of catch you up a little bit, is because the letter Hebrews is a letter that's written to a variety of Hebrews, Jewish people. It was written to 3 different categories of people: Christian Jews, Jews that were what are referred to as intellectually convinced but not spiritually. They hadn't come all the way to faith. Committed. There you go. Exactly. They hadn't come all the way to faith, and then just all out unbelievers. Okay, and so because we are speaking about Jewish people and learning what we can for ourselves from it, obviously, Moses is the man, pretty much. Okay, he is the man in Jewish circles. So I wanted to lay out some of the important things about Moses in the Bible. Moses is revered as the greatest prophet and teacher in Judaism, serving as the founder of the religious system of Israel and the interpreter of the covenant between God and his people. And you'll find that in the book of Deuteronomy. Moses led the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt, acting as God's chosen deliverer and the organizer of Israel's judicial, religious, and civil traditions as well. As the mediator of the Old Covenant, Moses received and delivered the 10 Commandments from God at Mount Sinai, establishing the foundation for Israelite worship and ethics. Moses is traditionally regarded as the principal author of the Pentateuch, which is the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, which these books form the core of Jewish and even Christian scriptures. Okay, Moses, despite personal flaws, because he did have them, okay, he exemplified faith, obedience, and intercession for his people, teaching lessons in humility, leadership, and trust in God. And then in Christianity, Moses prefigures Christ as a redeemer and a lawgiver, with his role in salvation from bondage, okay, for the Jewish people, symbolizing spiritual liberation as well. And I started thinking back when I was kind of putting these down that I thought about where I wrote here that he, despite his flaws, he exemplified faith and intercession. And I thought about, like in Numbers, when he's always praying God's about to bring the hammer down, okay? And he's praying, asking God, please, hold back, that forgive them for what they're doing and what there's, because the Jewish people in the wilderness there, they rose up a lot against Moses. And so, and I'll go through it in just a second, but in rising up against Moses, they were really rising up against God because Moses was God's man. And so, okay, so what about some of the miracles that are associated with Moses in the Bible? A lot of these y'all are going to know. God had miraculously protected Moses as a baby and personally provided for his burial as well. But between these 2 points of Moses' birth and his death were miracle after miracle after miracle. Okay, so some of these include the staff that was turned into a serpent. Moses' hand was made leprous and then restored. Water turned to blood. The 10 plagues of Egypt, the parting of the Red Sea, the drowning of Pharaoh's army, the pillar of cloud by day and fire by night, bitter waters made sweet, manna from heaven, quail for meat, water from the rock. So there's a lot of stuff that happened out there in the wilderness with Moses. And there's even, and I want to say that it's in, I can't remember if it's in Exodus or Leviticus, and maybe it's not either one, but I do remember in reading through those that the title of one of the sections in my scriptures was Moses given powers. So now I do believe that Moses was the vehicle that God used, and that God was really the one performing all the miracles. But I think Moses was given a certain degree of abilities also. Now, exactly, I'm not 100%, so I don't want to mislead y'all in any way.
The disciples were given.
They were.
Mm-hmm.
They were.
So why not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So during the rebellion of the people in the book of Numbers, God executed judgment for this rebellion, first of all, by opening the earth and swallowing Korah and those who rebelled along with him. Miriam, for speaking against her brother, was struck with leprosy. And then there's the fiery serpents that were sent by God to bite those who had spoken against Moses. Okay? So the people were rising up against God and against Moses. And as God's man, God protected him, and he brought judgment on the rebellious people because of, they were just one complaint after another. Something wonderful would happen, a miracle. God would provide the water, he would provide the manna, he'd provide the quail, whatever.
And I'm not like that.
And then in the very next verse, they're complaining about, you brought us out here to die in the wilderness, And I just, I couldn't help but think, we can be like that too.
Absolutely.
Right? I don't want to be too hard on the Jewish people because, I think just as human beings, we can be like that too.
Well,
and
we just forget.
We forget all the
so
goodness.
Day to day to day.
Yes, we forget the goodness of God and everything that he's done for us.
But it does sound pretty miserable to be wandering in the desert.
I
in
know,
their
in a
defense,
circle, right?
it is kind of
And eating the same thing.
I think about that too because I have no problem eating leftovers. Okay, but then there comes a point when it's like, okay, I'm on day 3 of leftovers, and I'm like, ugh.
Mark will not eat my leftovers.
Well, he will eat
Well, I know,
leftovers,
but
he
he gets tired of it quickly. He'll call me and be like, "Your mother makes chicken day in and day out." I'm like, "Mom, fix the man something else."
He did that. As a matter of fact, this is a total sidebar here. Now that we're talking about Mark, okay? This is a total side note here. That expression, chicken day in and day out, okay? A few years ago, for his birthday, Sephora and I, we got on Etsy, and Mark has like these goofy sayings that he's come up with over the years.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I'm not even going to repeat
Yeah.
it because they're just so dumb. So Sephora and I reached out to this lady that makes, like signs and stuff like that for you. And we listed like
That's cute.
4
That
of
is
and we
cute.
called them grandpa-isms.
That's sweet.
And so anyhow, that's what we gave him for his birthday a few years
And
ago.
it's chicken
And chicken day in and day out was
That's
in there, yeah.
really cute. That's really
Chicken
cute.
day in, day out.
Yes,
That's cute.
yes, because he said that's all I fixed was chicken every day. That's all he ate.
Yeah.
That's why I look so good.
That's what he does. Thank you.
That's funny.
Okay, all right. So I digress.
You have a good husband who will eat leftovers.
Justin.
I always love that about
Mm.
Justin.
He's
Yes.
really good
Yes.
at that.
That's
good.
great.
Today I was like, do you
He
think
always
that rotisserie chicken's good? I bet it's
Yeah, exactly.
Local too. It's great.
Yeah.
It's
Mark's like,
John's
Sarah,
a
you
lot.
have to
Yeah.
smell it. It's not good.
I'm with Mark on that one.
John won't. I'll eat leftovers, John.
John-
won't. Hardly.
He won't
Yes,
either?
Davis.
Hardly.
It's
ever.
'cause
Well,
Such a
you're a
good
good
cook.
cook,
Yeah,
so
I know.
good for him.
Like,
He
I have to
knows well.
talk him into it. I'm like, we have all this food, we cannot waste
Yeah,
it. Think
basically, I
about
know.
throwing it
You
away.
got it.
I know, we can't, right.
So
That's good.
maybe
That's
he'll
cute.
do it then.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so there were the way God protected Moses against the rebellious people, and then in the New Testament we find Moses at the transfiguration of Jesus. Okay, so he's in the
He
New.
is important.
He's an
Yeah.
important guy. He is. So in Hebrews 1:1, and y'all don't have to go there. We looked at the very first verse of Hebrews. It said, God, after he spoke long ago to the fathers in the prophets in many portions and in many ways. So God in the Old Testament revealed his will, his messages, his judgments, and his plans to the prophets through visions, through dreams, sometimes through angels. Moses was a prophet, but he was on a whole other level than the other prophets. And I want us to take look at a couple of verses that speak to this. Go to Numbers chapter 12.
What verse?
Numbers chapter 12, verses 6 to 8. And somebody holler out when you've got it.
I got it.
Okay.
And he said, Hear my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak with him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. With him I speak mouth to mouth, clearly, and not in riddles, and he beholds the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses?
Okay. So God spoke to Moses without mediation. Okay. He did not speak to Moses through visions or through dreams, but he spoke to him plainly. Now, this is not to say that Moses saw the full glory of God, okay? But rather, it's saying to us that he had the most explicit, most intimate encounters with God, okay? And he was privileged to see the likeness of God, okay? So now go to Exodus 34. And verse 29. Danielle, are you there?
I am. Just verse 29?
Uh-huh.
When Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hand as he came down from the mountain, Moses did not know that the skin of his face shone because he had been talking with God.
Okay. And then down to verse 33, it says that Moses put a veil over his face because his face
The glow.
was just glowing from the interaction that he had had
Why
with
did you put the
God.
veil on to keep it longer?
Protect the people.
I think to protect the people,
Mhm.
yeah, because I mean he was just radiating the glory of God.
And he had no food and water for 40 days and 40 nights.
Yeah,
But he still looked like that.
yeah, I know.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that just shows you the level of intimacy that God
That's good.
allowed him to have, okay, far above any other. So you can see, just based on those 2 verses, that why Moses was so important, so revered, and so influential over the Jewish people even to this day. The Hebrew people to whom the writer addressed this letter would have known these verses, and they would have known the stories about Moses. They would have participated in all of the religious ceremonies of Judaism, and because they were being persecuted, now at this point, these believers, because they were being persecuted, they were in danger of abandoning their faith in Jesus and reverting to the traditional Judaistic ways, okay? And they were in danger of returning to the system of law, to the sacrifices, to the priesthood. And the writer is sending them this letter telling them, no, don't do that. Okay, you don't want to go back to the old. Even though Moses was this great man, okay, and you loved him and everything else, and you see everything that he did through, that God did through him, you still don't want to go back to the old because they were in real danger of, and there had been some that had gone back to Judaism. And so the writer is kind of battling this. He's trying to keep the believers from abandoning because there had been some who had already been doing that. So that's important in this letter here. So in chapter 2, and y'all don't need to go there, but in chapter 2, the warning to those who are intellectually convinced but spiritually uncommitted is addressed. And the warning is what? Listen to Jesus, because the consequences of not listening to him are too great. Now in this chapter, the writer is shifting, and now we're talking to believers. Okay? In chapter 2, he was talking to those who had not come all the way to faith. Here he's talking to actual Christians, Christian Jews. Okay? So, Hebrews chapter 3. I'm going to go ahead and read the 6 verses, and then we'll just kind of break them down the way we always do. Starting in verse 1, Hebrews chapter 3. Therefore, holy brethren, partakers of a heavenly calling, consider Jesus, the apostle and high priest of our confession. He was faithful to him who appointed him, as Moses also was in all his house. For he has been counted worthy of more glory than Moses, but just so much as the builder of the house has more honor than the house, for every house is built by someone, but the builder of all things is God. Now Moses was faithful in all his house as a servant, for a testimony of those things which were to be spoken later. But Christ was faithful as a son over his house, whose house we are, if we hold fast our confidence and the boast of our hope firm until the end. So this section here ends with a little warning clause at the very end, and we're going to talk about that more as we get to it. But by the fact that the writer calls the people holy brethren, by that we know that he's talking to Christians. And he's telling them, based on what you know to be true, okay, that Jesus, from chapter 2, that Jesus came to recover man's lost destiny, that Jesus humbled himself and became our substitute, that he is the author of our salvation, he is our sanctifier, he is our Satan conqueror, and he is our sympathizer. Based on that, and based also on the fact that he tells them here, partakers of a heavenly calling, he says, consider Jesus. Okay, and we're going to get to that in just a second, but first we're going to take a look at a verse that I know y'all are all familiar with, and that's Romans chapter 8, verse 30. We're going to talk about this heavenly calling first, okay? Jeannie, are you there?
No.
No? Kathy, are you there? Okay.
I'm getting there. I'm almost there, but
Romans
And those
8:30.
he predestined, he also called. Those he called, he also justified. Those he justified, he also glorified.
Okay, so God draws believers to himself. Okay, He draws us to himself. And God has set believers apart from sin unto himself, so that we are holy ones. And that's what the writer is saying, and what he means when he writes that we are partakers of a heavenly calling. God has issued that call. It's called the effectual call of salvation. And so he's saying, based on everything that you know about what we studied in chapter 2, based on what I told you in chapter 2, if you were speaking that way, okay? And the fact that we know that you are a believer because God has called you to that position, consider Jesus. So why do you think you'd be telling them at this point, consider Jesus? So, the word consider in the original Greek language implies attention and continuous observation. In our English language, from just dictionary.com, okay, the word consider means to think carefully about, especially in order to make a decision. Means to contemplate or to reflect on. So the writer is saying, put your mind.
Fix my eyes
That's
on Jesus.
right.
Fix your eyes on Christ.
That'd
Okay?
make a good name for a song.
It
It
would. It would. So here again, the question for us is, what are the things that we think about? Because surveys show that we all have thousands of thoughts per day.
I believe that.
Yeah. We have thousands of thoughts, things going through our mind every single day.
Men too?
Gee, you would, wouldn't you? That's okay. So what are the things that we think about? What are the things that we put our minds on? What do we contemplate? And here again, just a basic little AI search, okay? The things that people most commonly think about are things like what to eat.
Yeah.
And I thought about
To cook for dinner.
yeah, exactly. Friday, Taryn and I are going to go to Alamogordo just to do a little shopping and
Just
have
to
some
eat.
lunch. Exactly. And I was thinking to myself, I just know that on the way down there, we're going to be talking about what are we going
What are we
to
gonna
eat?
eat?
Where are we going to go?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So that's just one of the things that we think about,
Yeah,
okay?
for sure.
What
For
to
sure.
eat, what to wear, our
Mhm.
to-do list.
Mhm.
I got to get somewhere on time. Work or school tasks, money and bills, children and spouses. Yes, those are all they're good. They're not bad things.
Mm-mm.
Okay, these are good things. But do we put our minds on Jesus with the same consideration, even the same consideration that we do on just the everyday stuff?
Mhm.
And that's why
That's good.
this writer says, consider Jesus. Put your mind on him and let it remain there so that you may understand who he is and what he wills. And we talk about that all the time in class, that the only way for us to know what God's will is for our life is if we know the scriptures.
Mhm.
Okay, because it's in there.
Mhm.
Okay, we make a big
Yeah.
confusion out of it, but it's in the scriptures what God wills for us. And the only way to get to know God better is through the scriptures. Okay, so putting our mind on Christ it definitely can look like reading the scriptures,
Mhm.
studying the scriptures, meditating on them, praying, praying the scriptures. You know, I think we find that when we get in trials and things like that, that's one of the times when we do, maybe pray the scriptures. God, you promised
desperate.
whatever,
Yeah.
and so I'm leaning on that now, kind of thing. But it's really something that we should be considering every day. It should be a part of just who we are as believers. That's what he's saying. those with a heavenly calling, this is who you should be. This is what your life should look like, you know. So,
I'm thinking through the praying without ceasing.
yep,
Like, I mean, that's supposed to be, and I'm
Right,
wondering that it's got to be all about Him.
right.
If you're praying without,
Mhm.
anyway,
Yeah.
if we're supposed to be praying all the time and fixing our eyes on Jesus, those have to be
Uh-huh.
kind of the same.
Yeah, they are.
So-
They are. So it's important. He's making a big point about this. And so what is one of the ways that he's going to tell us here that we can consider Christ as greater than Moses, because that's where he's going to now. Okay, first he's telling us you have a heavenly calling, consider Jesus, keep your eyes on him, keep your focus on him. But he's also going to start telling us now why Christ is greater than Moses. Okay, and the first one is in verse 1, where he says he is the apostle and the high priest of our confession. Okay, so an apostle, from the Greek word apostolos, means sent one. Okay, Moses, although he was never called an apostle in the scriptures, he could be considered an Old Testament apostle because he was God's man. He was God's apostle. He was sent by God to bring his people the law, to free them out of Egypt, to bring them the old covenant as well. But Moses was never a priest, and he certainly wasn't a high priest. Okay, Jesus was both of these. Jesus is the supreme apostle. He is the supreme sent one from God. And we're going to look at the role of the high priest in greater detail in chapters 4 and 5. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on it right now. But we can say that based off of this verse that Jesus is the supreme mediator between God and man. And Moses, that was not a role that Moses had. God did not give Moses that role. And so in Matthew 27, and y'all can go to 27:51. This verse might seem a little bit oddly placed here.
27:51?
27:51. But I'll kind of try and pull it together here. This is Jesus has died on the cross. Okay. And Matthew 27:51 says, "And behold, the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom." So, according to the Mishnah, okay, which the Mishnah is extra rabbinical writings, okay, above and beyond the first 5 books of Moses. It's almost like it's rabbinical teaching is what it is. And Mishnah actually means repetition, okay? And so this is where a lot of all the extra stuff that Judaism taught came from. But according to the Mishnah, the only reason I say that is the veil in the temple, okay, that curtain was said to be about 3 to 4 inches thick, okay? And so the tearing of that veil was torn from top to bottom, okay? And that's not how you tear something anyway. You tear from bottom to top, right? So this is a 4-inch thick curtain, and the tearing of this curtain signified that the way into God's presence was now open to all people, okay, through Christ. And basically, the system of Judaism was done at that point. The new covenant had now arrived, which that's what Christ brought, and there would be no need for earthly priests any longer.
Well, but they didn't like that.
No, not at
The
all.
priest didn't, yeah.
No, not at all. So I just put that in there because Jesus, as the high priest of our confession, yes, he is the greatest priest. He is the high priest, and like I said, we're going to look at that further in the chapters to come. But the old covenant that Moses ushered in, okay, that was done with at the point where Jesus died on the cross, because Jesus brought the new covenant. And the new covenant, as we're going to see as we go through this book, is greater, much greater than the old covenant. And so there would be no need for any more of this. I listened to several years ago a message by John MacArthur on this verse, Matthew 27, and he was saying that, you know, all of that symbolism of the curtain tearing and everything was just, yes, it was God saying a new time has come now, and the old has passed. But he's like it's almost though as he was saying this system has gone down, no more. It is now the time of Christ, and that's really what where we're at, and what the writer is expressing here is he's trying to get across to these people, you don't need that anymore. You don't need to hang on to all that old stuff, because Christ has brought the new in, and you've believed it. So don't go back. Don't go back. Don't revert back to what you used to believe. Okay? And so then in verses 2 to 4, he says, "He was faithful to him who appointed him, as Moses also was in all his house. For he has been counted worthy of more glory than Moses, but just so much as the builder of the house has more honor than the house. For every house is built by someone, but the builder of all things is God." What's he saying, ladies? What's he saying? Taryn, I thought about John.
Yeah,
Okay,
I do too.
I thought about John.
I always do on that one.
And when John builds a house, and he's got his happy homeowners and all that kind of stuff, people that see their homes want to know
Yeah,
who built it.
Yeah.
Who was the builder of this house? Because such a
And it used to
craftsman
be
that he
more
has.
like that than it is today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where homes were very important. People would come into a town and they would say, "Where's the oldest house on the block?" Because it had all the little things in it, the niches and the special parts that made it.
Right.
Because it was old. It wasn't new.
Exactly. And what's going on here with these verses, and I'm going to read right straight through here because I don't want to mess it up. Okay, the writer is shifting gears, and he's comparing Jesus and Moses, but he's starting first by highlighting their similarities. Okay, why would the Holy Spirit inspire the writer to address similarities first before talking about the difference? And we have to go back and think of who he's talking about here. For Gentiles, and for us, it's hard for us to understand the affection that the Jews have and have always held for Moses. Okay, he was a great man. He was a man of God, and almost everything of importance connected with God in their mind is connected to Moses. Okay, so it's hard for them to separate. The scriptures refer to the law of Moses. Okay.
That's right.
Okay,
You're
so
right.
I mean, like I've been saying, he's a big deal. So the builder of the house, the builder and the house. Okay, Moses was faithful. Okay, the Old Testament confirms this in the passage, first of all, that we looked at from Numbers chapter 12. Moses carried out God's plan. He came out of Egypt to the wilderness, and God prepared Moses for his use for 40 years, and then he used him for 40 more years, okay, in all that wilderness time. Because as you remember, Moses did not get to go into the promised land, okay? So for 40 years, Moses led the people through the wilderness, and he was faithful. But that one, and
I
as
know.
far as
I
the
know.
the
I
one
know.
that
Seems
day that he
unfair.
did,
I know.
I know, the one,
Yeah.
the one, and you think, okay, so he hit the rock
Yeah.
instead of speaking
So
to it,
what?
yeah. But it
Well,
was
it's
disobedience.
disobedience, so, yeah.
It was
And it mattered to
disobedience,
the Lord.
and it
Yeah.
mattered to God. And here again, for us, disobedience matters to God.
Especially a leader.
Yeah,
Mhm.
And
exactly.
then he's held in a different.
He is, he
Mhm.
is, and
Held to a
leaders
higher
are.
standard.
They are for sure.
It's a bummer.
And so, one act of disobedience kept him
Yes.
out of
How are any of
out of
us
the
doing
promised land.
anything?
I know, exactly.
Yeah,
It's like
But he was
we
so,
should all be struck dead.
Yeah. Well, we're not in the promised land. Let's say that.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, he was so humble though.
He
He
was.
just handled it. He's
Mhm.
just.
And he was known for his humility also.
Yeah, he was. That's what I
So,
mean.
yeah. So, it's, yeah, we're talking about like I said, a man that was highly regarded. Okay, so the builder and the house. The word house comes from the Greek word oikos, kind of like the yogurt.
Yeah, it
Yogurt,
is.
okay, it's spelled just like it too. Yeah,
Interesting.
okay, and it refers to people, not a building. Okay, so here's where we're going to look at the contrast here. The Israelites were God's household, and Moses was a trustworthy steward of that house. Okay, of that household. A steward does not own the house, but manages it for the owner. God owned the house of Israel, and Moses managed it for a while. So, in dispensing to the people of Israel the truths, the commandments, the requirements, and the promises God had committed to him, in this, Moses proved trustworthy with God's house and with his people. But then he tells us also that Jesus was faithful as well. Okay? So, as the supreme apostle and sent one, Jesus was completely faithful to the Father, and Jesus came to glorify the Father and accomplish his will. And you don't need to turn to these verses, but I'm just going to read them for you. John 7:18, this is Jesus speaking, said, "He who speaks from himself seeks his own glory, but he who is seeking the glory of the one who sent him, he is true, and there is no unrighteousness in him." So Jesus was always doing the work and the will of the Father. Okay? And he says, "For I have come down from heaven not to do my own will, but the will of him who sent me." So Christ's house is who? Who's Christ's house? If Moses' house were the Israelites,
We are.
yeah, the church. Yeah, the
Mhm.
church is Christ's house. Turn to Ephesians chapter 2.
Which verse?
19. Ephesians 2:19. Are you there, Daniel?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So then you are no longer strangers and aliens, but you are fellow citizens with the saints and members of the household of God.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So God's kingdom is made up of people from all time who have trusted in him. Christians, redeemed sinners, are not only heavenly citizens, but we are members of God's own family. So Christians are the new household, and Jesus is the one who cares for us. So Moses was faithful. He was a trustworthy steward, but he was a part of the house. Okay? Jesus made the house.
Right.
There's your difference, okay?
Yeah.
There's your
Good deal,
difference.
yeah.
Jesus was the builder, okay? Jesus made the house. Jesus made Moses, okay? Moses was a member of the household that Jesus built. Jesus created Israel. He created the church. Therefore, Jesus is God. And therefore, he is greater than Moses, okay? So, the second reason why Jesus is greater than Moses is because Jesus is the builder and Moses is part of the household, just the same way as we are. As great as he was, that's his position. Okay? So, what about us? We too are called to be stewards and in God's house. Okay? We are all given some kind of gift as believers. Are we using them? Are we exercising them? Part of what I read in my commentaries was that we can even slip into not carrying out our gift with full commitment, put it that way. Okay. Meaning, for example, like let's say I came before you every Tuesday as Bible study teacher, and I was not prepared at all. Okay, and I'm just kind of,
You just shared your heart with us.
I'm just kind of
I wouldn't
winging
be
it.
here.
Yeah, I'm just winging it, and I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. Okay, and you guys are looking at me like, what? You probably are anyway, but still,
No, not at all.
But I just didn't put effort into it. Put it that way. Am I really
That's a good analogy.
working my gift the way I should? Am I really
With all your
serving?
heart.
Am I really serving with my heart the way I should? If I'm saying that this is something I want to do, this is something that I feel called to do, but then I put no effort into it. And it's kind of like with you. If you just said, we're just gonna get up there, we're just gonna play every Sunday, and we're not gonna,
I've done music with people like that.
we're not gonna practice, we're not gonna do anything.
Yeah.
Okay. And Jen, you just know
Which
when
we
to
did
chime
last
in.
Sunday, by the way.
Yeah, we did that last Sunday. Actually.
Sometimes you have to.
We
Yeah.
had to.
Sometimes you have to.
Well,
Things
people used
come
to tell
up.
Justin, we just wish you wouldn't prepare. We wish you just share your heart.
People
And I
tell
wanted
them
to.
that?
They
Yeah.
used to tell them that they don't go to the church anymore. But anyway, and I'm what a stupid
want-
thing
yeah,
to say.
right.
Your heart is make it above all things, and you wanted to share his heart.
Yeah.
It was so dumb.
I
It's the
know.
stupidest thing they've
Yeah.
ever said. Anyway.
It is. I mean, I think you can share your heart in an illustration.
That's all they wanted. They just thought he
Yeah.
was,
Mhm.
Too
Just
Harry, come on, come on.
What is it with you and that Bible?
Yeah, and just think about what fruit that
I know.
gives.
I
That
know.
doesn't give
Well, they
any
didn't
fruit
say
at all.
all, but yeah, it's a
Uh-huh.
bummer. Anyway.
Exactly. So just something for us to think about, ladies. Are we exercising our gifts? And if so, are we diligently doing so?
Working as though we're working. Well, no, we are working for the Lord. But
Yeah.
Well, we don't want to be lukewarm. There's that scripture,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what
Yeah,
you're
that's
describing.
right.
Yeah, I'm going to do this, but I'm just going to not.
Mhm.
I don't really care how good it is.
Yeah.
Right.
And what does he say? I will spit you out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Is it lukewarm?
Yeah.
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 I think it says you'd be
Yeah,
better off
lukewarm,
to not
yeah.
be a believer at
At
all
all. That's right.
than to be lukewarm.
Exactly. So we don't want to be lukewarm, and we don't want to in our faith, and we don't want to be lukewarm in our gifts either.
That's good.
And we're
That's
called
good.
to serve. Whether we serve one another in the church or whether we serve in the community. Sharing the light and love of God to a dying world. So there's different ways that we can approach it, but at the end of the day, we're called to serve. We're called to steward the house of God. We're called to do our best with what He has given us. Because we're just kind of we're caretakers of it. Think of it that way. God has given me some ability to study the scriptures and hopefully be able to divide them in a way that y'all can understand them. But I have to consistently study. I have to consistently study. And I'm not saying this or anything like that, ladies, but the reality is that I will finish this lesson today, and by tomorrow I will be back in it again.
That's good.
Because especially with a book like this, that I can
Yeah,
it can go
such a
bad
good book.
real easily. That I can mess up real easily. Okay. And like I said, it's important to me. It's important to me
And you
that
love
that
it.
I do, and I do.
But we
And I'm
do with
sure
our
you still have
giftings.
to
Yeah.
discipline
There are
yourself.
less
Yeah.
effort than other things that are outside our gifting.
Right, exactly. So if it's important to you, you will do it. You will. Okay, and it won't
I
be a big
agree.
deal to do it.
I
It
think
won't be
that's
a
true.
struggle to do it. Yeah. So.
God has given you the gift of teaching and the desire to teach.
Right.
And it is a huge responsibility.
It is.
Not just because you said we would know you were just blowing it off, but what if you are saying things that aren't really
That's right.
true?
Right,
Which
And
right.
then
Right.
we're our
Yeah.
teacher, we're
Mhm.
absorbing it and
Right.
believing it.
Mhm.
It's a big responsibility
It
when
is.
you're a
It is.
pastor or a teacher.
It is, it is, and I take that very seriously
I know you
because
do.
of that,
Yes.
and because of passages like James that say, "Do not
Mhm.
rush to be a
To
teacher,
Right.
because you'll
That's
incur a
right.
And I
stricter
never have.
judgment."
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So it's like, oh, when I read passages like that, I'm like, why am I doing this? You know, I'm going to be judged really hard. You know. So anyhow, okay, I digress again. Okay, so the Christian life is a sacred trust given to us by God, and He demands our faithfulness. That's really basically, where I'm going with this. So, use your gifts, ladies. Find what your gift is, use it, and be faithful. Be
Yeah.
faithful to it. Okay. And so then in verses 5-6 now, our last two verses, the writer now says, back in Hebrews, now Moses was faithful in all his house as a servant, for a testimony of those things which were to be spoken later. But Christ was faithful as a son over his house, whose house we are, if we hold fast our confidence and the boast of our hope firm until the end. That's what we're going to focus in on.
Mine doesn't say firm until
Yeah,
the end.
mine doesn't either.
What does yours say?
It just ends in
Just
boasting
ends
in
it.
our hope.
In our hope? Okay.
Boast of our hope.
Oh, okay. So, how can we know that we are really God's house? Meaning, who's a Christian? Who's a Christian? And the verse tells us the one who holds fast. Okay. Now, many have misinterpreted this verse, believing that we must earn salvation
Yeah.
by perseverance, meaning perseverance in religious
Means
works and rituals, all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
The exterior.
Right.
Meaning
Okay.
if we're truly saved, we will hold fast.
Right.
Because he's
He's
But
holding
he's
us
the
fast.
one that holds us.
Exactly. So we can't save ourselves, correct?
Mhm.
And we can't keep ourselves saved either. Okay. So holding fast simply means that continuance in the faith is the proof of its reality. Okay.
That's right.
Because trials, economic hardships, illnesses, death, all of those things can and do happen to us. But if those things happen to us and we fall away, well then we're not holding fast that confidence, okay? That's giving evidence that we were not saved in the first place. And that's kind of where I wanted to go to next is 1 John chapter 2. Verse 19 tells us exactly this, okay? Is those who don't hold fast and fall away give evidence that they were never truly a part of the house. And 1 John 2:19 says, they went out from us, but they were not really of us. For if they had been of us, they would have remained held fast, okay, with us. But they went out so that it would be shown that they are not all of us.
What was that?
Okay.
The scripture?
1 John 2:19.
Thank you.
So, yes, we know that God holds us. We know that, okay? And that those that are truly saved, those that are truly born again believers, they're gonna make it to the end because God's gonna get you there. Okay? Jesus said he would not lose one that the Father gave him. Okay? So if you're a true believer, you're gonna get there. But there is an element here again, just like with salvation, we know it's the work of God, but we also know that there's an element of man's responsibility. Same thing with this is we know that God's the one that holds us fast, but at the same time, what are ways that we can hold fast ourselves? What are some of the things that we can do?
Well, reading,
Yeah,
praying,
reading,
fellowship.
fellowship, praying, going to church, and that sounds very worky in a way, but it's not.
No.
It's not. It's
No.
just the ways that believers Genuine believers want to do those
Well, the
things.
Spirit of God
I agree.
Yeah,
compels us
they
to
will-
do
I
those
agree.
Right.
things.
You want to do those things.
Mhm.
Okay? It's not, "Ugh, it's Sunday and I got to go to church."
Oh, I've
Sometimes
had
it is,
days
though.
like that.
Every once in a while, sometimes it is.
But
I know.
not,
But I mean, not
but
as a
I
whole.
still
Not-
always
not as a
want
whole,
to,
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. It's not. It's not a chore. It's not a chore, and it's not a chore to come to Bible study, or it's not a chore to go to Wednesday night or whatever, because you want to be with a body of believers. You want to be with like-minded people, because the rest of the week you're probably with all
The world.
the world. Exactly. You're with those who don't think the same way you do, who don't believe the same way you do, and holding fast can become a challenge if you're trying to go it alone. Okay, it's not Christianity is not a solo
you won't
sport.
make it.
Yeah, you won't make it. Exactly, it's not a solo sport. Okay.
I think about my salvation and how
Mhm.
long it's been, and I can definitely tell you that just as long as I've lived and knowing myself, I'm still, I have never, ever, I've gotten mad at God once, but
Mhm.
I've never, ever not wanted Him in my life since I accepted the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
and He has held me. I know I would never have lasted this long.
Yeah.
You know, I
Mhm.
do. I
Mhm.
truly, it's quite a testimony when I think about that. It just,
Well, we
proof.
waver all the time. I mean, we
Yeah,
waver all the
yeah.
time.
Right.
But He remembers that we're dust. That always gives me such comfort.
Uh-huh.
He remembers you're weak. Without me, you're
Mhm.
totally weak. You don't have what it takes. You're dust.
Yeah.
And that's freeing, because we are.
Yeah,
And
it
we all
is.
relate to that all the time, I think.
Exactly.
So I think it's
Mhm.
always,
Up and down kind of thing.
So-
Yeah. Because in our flesh, in our
Yeah,
flesh,
yeah.
we we stray in the
Mhm.
sense that we maybe don't always consider.
Mhm.
Okay, we don't always
Yeah.
consider Jesus.
Yeah, that's it. Then we
You
get
know.
distracted.
We get
Mhm.
distracted. Exactly. And the things of the world, and the troubles of the world, and
Oh, yeah.
the struggles of the world and of our lives
Raising kids.
get in the way. Yeah.
Goodness.
Those
Yeah,
stinking
it gets
kids.
those stinking
Mm.
kids. That's right. Let me tell you what. But you keep on trusting,
That's
right?
right.
Mhm.
That's right.
So, but yeah. So okay. So, as I said before, at this point where the writer is sending this letter, there had been Jews who had fallen away. Okay. This is why this verse, if we hold fast our confidence, is both a warning and an encouragement. And John MacArthur writes in his commentary that the writer is saying to his Jewish readers, "You are citizens of the heavenlies, so why don't you let go of the earthly things? Why do you want to hang on to the earthly rituals, the earthly symbols, when you have the heavenly reality?" And that, I think, is good for
That's
all
really
of
good to
us.
hear.
Yeah.
It
Don't
is.
hold on too tightly to the things of this world. And John chapter 4, verse 23, y'all can go to that one. It's our last verse for today.
$4.23.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, John.
John 4, 23. Jan, do you have it?
I got it.
Okay.
But the hour is coming, and is now here, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such people to worship Him.
Okay. So worship is inward, okay, not outward. And you have to remember that these people, these Jewish Christians, came from a very outward background. Everything was about what you do. All of the ceremonies, all the rituals, all the
Think about
sacrifices,
how hard it would be to believe.
Yeah,
To-
to break out of that.
to
Break
walk
out of
away
that,
from
yeah.
that. And then you throw some persecution into the
Yep.
mix, like they
Yeah.
were, like we've learned at the beginning of the letter, that they were undergoing persecution. They were being ostracized by their families and stuff like that. So you throw that into the mix, and you can see where someone might think, well, maybe I should just follow along with the rest of my family. maybe I should just stick with what
Well, it
I
feels
know.
right. Our tendency,
Yeah.
our flesh wants to perform
Exactly.
and earn.
It does, yeah, because we're programmed that way. You know, that we think that we need to do something to that surely salvation isn't just really free. You know, surely I have to do something to
Nothing
earn my
is
way.
free.
You know, but no, I mean, you say that, and I thought of something. Did any of y'all ever watch the movie Ray, about Ray Charles?
I
I
have.
don't think I
Came out several years ago, quite a few years ago now. And when his mother is putting him on the bus to, I don't know, go to some school or
And
something
he's
or
already
other.
blind, isn't he?
Yes, he's a
Yeah,
child and
so
he's blind.
sad. His eyes are melting.
Uh-huh. And
So sad.
and she's putting him on the bus, and she gets down in front of him and she says, "You just remember, there's nothing free in this world except Jesus."
Oh.
And she puts him on the bus,
That's
you know.
sweet.
And
I
I just
like
thought of
that.
that when
That's
you
sweet.
said that. Yeah,
That's
but
sweet.
it's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
That's very
There's no
good.
such thing
It's
as
true.
free in this world
So you have
except
to,
for Christ.
that,
Yeah.
that's a hard one to,
Yeah. Yeah.
to witness about. You
Mhm.
know, I mean, it's a hard concept for people to accept.
It is
It really,
because
truly
because the
is.
majority of
Uh-huh.
even Christianity in
Mhm.
our country
Mhm.
today, different forms of Christianity, say that you have to do
Oh,
something,
absolutely.
that you have to
Well,
perform.
that
Yeah.
makes me feel better.
Yeah.
You love me? Tell me what's so good about me. You know, I mean,
Mhm.
no, he just loves you. And
Right, right.
Get your mind off of yourself. you know.
Right, exactly,
Nobody likes
exactly.
that. I didn't.
Because the thing is that in all of those types of systems, including even in this system of Judaism, you just never know when or if you've ever done enough. How do you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
Right.
If
Yeah, that's
you're
good.
if you're in a system of
That's
works
good.
and your works get you to heaven, how do you know if you've done enough?
That's scary.
That is a scary thought, and that's a bondage that
Mhm.
religion puts people
That's
under.
Right. That's right.
Okay, that's that the burden that Jesus scolded the Pharisees over when he says you bind them up or something, you put a yoke on them that they can't
yeah,
even
that they
carry,
can't
and you
even-
don't even help them carry it, you
yeah.
know,
Mhm.
kind of thing. That's what religion does, and that's what this writer is trying to combat. You know, don't go back to that. It's not it's not what you want to do.
Mhm.
It's not where you want to be. You know, consider Jesus and stay with him.
And
Stay with him. Don't
And I'm
go
thinking
back.
human
I love
nature.
that.
The Israelites. I mean, they needed Saul.
Mhm.
And God said, "Okay, you want a king, but we always want a person.
Right.
They want
Mhm.
Moses. We
Mhm.
have the Pope now. We
Mhm.
want Mary.
Mhm.
Anybody, but
Any-
we want somebody that
Mhm.
represents us in the flesh.
Right.
That's
right.
always the tendency. And
Right.
he's having to combat it again.
And then
Yeah.
our pastor gets up there last Sunday and says,
I'm
I
screwed up.
failed too.
Yeah.
And people might go, oh no,
Mhm.
we want to look up
Yeah.
to you. We
Yeah,
want to
don't.
admire
Don't.
you.
Yeah, don't
Come
look
talk
up
to
to
And that's
me.
not
Yeah,
right.
don't
Yeah.
look to me. Yeah, don't look up to me, not at all. No. So, as great as Moses was, Jesus is greater. Jesus is the greater apostle and high priest. Jesus is the builder of the house. Moses was the manager of the house. Moses was faithful as a servant, and Jesus was faithful as a son. And because of those things, do not return to the old ways and stop putting Moses in such high esteem, because you have the greater one now.
That's very good.
You have believed in the greater one now. So stick with him. And that's what I say to all of y'all too.
Yeah,
Stick
that's
with
right.
him.
That's right. That's right. Amen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do y'all have any questions, any other comments or anything? That's all I have for y'all today.
That was enough.
That's good stuff. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. So that is the end of another stream for today, and so we'll be back next week, and we'll finish the chapter 3 of Hebrews, and we will see you then. Bye.